Life we have designed to be a bit scary.
Okay.
Because this is a rogue who can manifest a psychic blade out of their hands, or blades if they want to manifest two, and use them not only in melee, but they can also throw them. And these blades deal psychic damage, and we describe it as essentially you are stabbing the other person's, like their mind, their soul, hence the name, Soul Knife. So that alone is scary. But this rogue also eventually gains the ability to, using their psionic abilities, to essentially screen themselves out of other people's sight so they can just poof, they're invisible.
Oh.
And so we describe in the story text for them that they are particularly effective at being assassins because there isn't necessarily any evidence left behind, you know, because if you stab someone's sort of psychic being wound on their body, so
wow, man, what's even the implication for resurrection after something like that?
oh well, the body is still there.
Yeah.
So they are potentially terrifying, especially if they were, you know, NPCs. But also really mighty members of a group because they're able to couple the normal versatility that all rogues have with these really wonderfully wicked psychic abilities. Being able to sneak attack with psychic damage because we clarify that these psychic blades that they manifest do count as finesse weapons, and they're light weapons as well, so the rogue can dual wield them. Imagine one of them on the battlefield, and I think most people would be
And they can throw these as well. So they're just tossing psychic blades out all willy-nilly.
Yes. So you can imagine, yes, one of these things coming at
Trying
you,
to Skyrim up
and
this
then it hits
wall.
you, and then where did it go? And it would hurt. It would hurt like a
Skyrim away from this bear.
But again, leave no mark. Leave no evidence. We also specify that if you toss one out immediately after it hits you.
Oh, it's like a way it's like oh, that's very fun. Okay, now I like that. I can't help
Because these blades are not doing flashing.
you just find a body. It reminds me of like Jeronis games, but I feel like the inspiration for this is from the shadows, radio drama. Like you can like make people not realize you're in the room. You know, that was always this thing, like you somehow hypnotize people to see what it is. I never quite understood it yet, but this is the scariest.
I mean, again, mind to it.
Yeah.
So, this Soul Knife would be a very favorite assassin. We also, for both the Soul Knife and the Soul suggestions for how to we talked about how the character might have awoken to some ability. They also might have been trained in it by a master. It might have, in the case of the Soul Knife, might have been a member of a special thieves guild that cultivates these abilities, or that the psychic warrior might have been in a martial academy that trains people in using both their body and their mind as a weapon. So the thing I love about both of these subclasses is not only will they be a ton of fun to play, but they're also rich with possibility for figuring out these people with strange mind powers that have a magical quality to them, but operate in ways that might shock people. And I think again, if someone finds the handiwork of a Soul Knife, They are going to be very puzzled. I could imagine a soul knife assassin causing even a detective like Sherlock Holmes to be very confused.
Right.
You know, how did this person actually die? And soul knife, especially with their higher level ability to basically psionically screen themselves and just go invisible.
Right.
You could see they could infiltrate, a masquerade or something else.
Right.
Deal with their mark and then just vanish away.
It's not comfortable. It's the stuff of everyone's nightmares. Yeah, it's got a little bit of that Invisible Man creepy factor to it too as well. Yeah, that's perfect assassin. I mean, for the person who wants.
Not again. Jesus.
Right, exactly. Because the assassin already is feeling it very different. In terms of like, I can talk like anyone, I can disguise myself. Very Assassin's Creed.
Well, and a person could decide to play a soul knife and not go in the assassin direction at all.
Right.
Their soul knife might be very much out in the open, almost more of a superhero than a figure of the shadows. Again, this is a person who's manifesting these psychic blades, sort of like Psylocke from the X-Men,
Right.
and using those in battle, which, depending on how a player describes that, could end up being very flashy rather than the subtle thing of the shadows. This is the kind of thing we often look for when we're coming up with new character concepts for the game. We want the character concepts to be pushable in different directions. So even here I've described, you could take the soul knife and go in a flashy, sort of superheroic direction, or you could take it in a kind of almost horrific, killer in the shadows kind of direction. It's up to you.
We now have a wizard who is very psionic based. Tell me about this new wizard and also the accompanying spell list.
Yes, so the third class, who gets a subclass in this Unearthed Arcana, is the wizard. A wizard who has studied the arcane tradition of psionics, and so the name of this arcane tradition is simply psionics.
So this is a new school.
It's not a school of magic.
Okay, it's not a school of magic.
No,
Right.
so the wizard subclasses are called arcane traditions.
Right.
And so whenever a wizard picks a subclass, they're essentially picking a magical tradition that they have dedicated themselves to. The wizards in the Player's Handbook have dedicated themselves to one of the 8 schools of magic, but there are other traditions out there. In
War
Xanathar's
magic.
Guide, we have wizards who dedicate themselves to the magical tradition of war magic. Here, these are wizards who've dedicated themselves to the magical tradition of psionics. And so these are wizards who are especially adept at using certain spells that have a psionic theme. And to assist players of this wizard, we have even provided a big list of spells from the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide, and this Unearthed Arcana, because we introduce a handful of new spells in this Unearthed Arcana, a list of all the psionic themed spells in the game. And it turns out there are a lot of them. And that's, again, intentional. We did that when creating the Player's Handbook. We made sure we were hitting sort of the psionic targets that D&D classically has really wanted to be there in its spell selection. So this wizard is very good at using those spells, and when the wizard adopts this tradition, they create an object called a psionic focus. It involves a crystal that they use to really focus, as it's in the name, to focus their psionic power. The game effect of this is they can use this crystal as a spellcasting
So
focus.
I need to not run away
Needs to
from the
simply be on
bears.
their person somewhere. They don't need to hold it necessarily. And they can also use it with any of their spells, even spells that don't normally if they use it, then one of their spells deals psychic damage. They then get to re-roll 1 to roll for the damage. Because really we want to make it so that these wizards more than anybody else. They attack times the damage that creates one of the fun side effects of this, and the technical one, is that these wizards are actually very good. You would want a psionic to be really good at helping force. These wizards also, at higher level, gain the ability to spin thought, where they turn themselves into pure thought and are able to, while they're in thought form, cast any of their wizard spells without components. They're just handling them silently, and they're doing a number of partially their capstone ability in this subclass is being able to, when they're in the software, to fly and also pass through solid objects. They just become the psionic being,
Pure thought.
who is floating around on the battlefield, wielding either psionically themed spells that were in the player's hand, or some of these ones here's the spell list in the kind of on creeds. People get big insinuation. People who are fans of psionic know that they are doing something all the way back to something like that. We included them not only because they're important for the psionic wizards, but we also wanted these spells to be available to bards, warlocks, sorcerers. So in the Southern Arcana, these new spells are offered up as options for all of those classes. We also know that sometimes people might want psionic flavor in their character without dedicating their subclass to this sort of particular aesthetic. And so in addition to there being spells accompanying the psionic flavor, we have pieces also that are here, and that is the telepathic speech and the telekinetic speech. And so these are available to anyone who uses the optional feature, and they will give any character a little bit of psionic telepathic telekinetic. So this UA taken together, the Psychic Warrior, the Soul Knight, the Psionics Wizard, the spells, the feats, you add this to the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer we did a while ago, the great old one, Warlock in the Player's Handbook.
Have you
a lot of the
always lived
spells
alone,
that are already in the
out
game.
in the wilderness
You
as
suddenly
an
have
apostate?
a really
For the most part.
nice
Would that not be
array
incredibly
of
trying?
options if
People
you
can be trying.
want your character to be silent.
Mankind, most of all.
That is an excellent point.
Absolutely. They are wizards, and D&D wizard is not a wizard. So one of the options they decide you have a sidebar that talks about who might come about, and then you decide, are you wearing it as an amulet? Is it in a circlet? Is it on a wand? But one of the other options is you could also embed it on the cover of your spellbook and actually use your spellbook to channel your psionic power.
Or it could just be a giant machinery.
That's right.
You can only cast spells in a building that's 6 feet tall, like 6 stories tall. Looks like
And we are really excited with this stuff. Wizards are the sort of mind-based class in being part of magic. They, of all people, would want to delve into the magic of the mind. And so if the wizard finds they have the knack for this kind of magic, they can move into this tradition. And again, eventually, through that study, gain the ability to become So the telepathic feat also gives you proficiency in skillful play. Skillful provider all skills involve interacting with other people. Because our design is that if you're able to use the phone, you also have an edge to interact with communicate. The telekinetic feat gives you range concept when you are able to actually hurl people away. So you have fun we have a variety of Yes, in the Sunrise we have three subclasses that have a human concept, and that is each of them are using the power of the mind, often called psionics, to fuel their abilities. Fighter is the psychic warrior. The psychic warrior has appeared in D&D in past editions, and so returns in 5th edition in this Unearthed Arcana to
Try to see
wield
if I can close this fader.
psionic and also telekinetic, well, specifically telekinetic power to move people around on the battlefield, call up, some protective force, also to use psychic power to bolster
Stay
their
away from regular grizzly
so
bears
this
because
is
they are now more
essentially
powerful.
if anyone has
because
ever
of
wanted
the
to play a
trial.
fighter who might feel a little bit like Darth Vader, this is
I would be that man.
yes, this is that fighter. And Dan Dillon did the initial design on it, and the feedback that I kept getting while he was working on it was more Darth Vader. Yes,
Not more tentacles.
no.
Mind this question here.
More
Got
Vader.
to.
Yeah.
How do you evoke something Vader as?
So part of that was I really wanted, and Dan agreed, for the Psychic Warrior to go in a telekinetic direction. Anytime you start playing in the psionics pool, there are a variety of directions you can go in. You can really lean into telepathy and other abilities that involve the manipulation or the peering into of minds. You can do telekinesis, moving around objects. And then, of course, there are also other classic psionic abilities, far sight, that sort of thing. Here, we really wanted the Psychic Warrior to be about telekinesis, partly because the fighter is so much the class about physical might. So we thought, especially if the Psychic Warrior was going to appear next to the Soul Knife, a rogue subclass,
Right.
and then also a psionic-themed wizard subclass, wanted to make sure they each actually had their own sort of portion of the psionics pie, and the fighter, it made the most sense to be the one who, again, is hurling people away, but also one of their abilities is, no, you over here. You're going to stay here. And we specifically designed it so that this subclass works well whether you're a ranged fighter or a melee fighter, and that's why you have like the choice again of no, get away from me, or no, come over here. The fighter also can use their telekinetic abilities to provide protection for themselves and also at certain points for their allies. So they can be a very protective Vader or a very offensive one. This is also a fighter who's going to in addition to emphasizing their strength or dexterity, they're going to want to make sure they have a reasonably high intelligence, because some of their abilities do care about what their intelligence modifier is.
Another intelligence fighter.
Yes.
That's 3 now.
The game is hungry for intelligence characters.
The game is hungry for intelligence characters.
Yes.
Not so hungry for charisma-based
Yes.
characters.
Yeah, the game is rich with charisma-based characters, strength characters, pretty much every other of the main stats that we tend to use for character abilities are covered well.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the player's handbook, the wizard is, all by themselves as the intelligence character. So we've enjoyed creating some other intelligence-based characters, which also is nice for people who like to multi-class. So it fills a conceptual space in terms of types of characters if you like to play single-class characters, but also gives you some new interesting options if you're somebody who uses the multi-class optional rule and you like to dip into other classes.
What do you like about the flavor of this fighter, this psychic fighter? Like, what makes it, like, you describe, those telekinetic abilities, being able to draw something to you or push them away, or being able to protect everybody, but, like, why is that such an iconic thing? Because it's almost like the Gish in a way. Like, Vader is almost like the original Gish.
Right. Well, people going all the way back to first edition, I think the marriage of martial prowess and some kind of supernatural, whether that's spellcasting, some kind of supernatural class feature, that marriage of the two
Looks like
appeals
Carter.
to a slice
With
of
both
sort of the
Templars
D&D
and mages
audience.
here, they
This in
profit
particular
greatly
I
from smuggling
enjoy
lyrium.
because I just simply love psionic abilities. They actually feature strongly in my home setting. It's neat when you have a character also who, in a way, their power just comes from themselves. That's also a story we have for the monk. A monk's key is very much that. Whereas,
Welcome to the
we have
Dungeon of
other
Olimar.
characters, paladins and clerics being the prime example, warlocks as well, where they get their power from some external source. Wizards, study their way to it. So it's neat to have characters who have this power that, like, they're it. This, however it manifested, spark within themselves. And
Must be an
they're
old
able to
dwarven
use it to
outpost.
fuel
What was it
these
for?
really spectacular
Trade,
abilities.
maybe? Your guess is as good as mine.
It's also fun because it has a little bit of a science fiction feel to it.
Yeah.
That has always been there in D&D. I realized that psionic abilities were in the first edition and sprinkled into characters of
Well, they
any
know we're
class.
here.
It's frankly why we made sure that in the handbook there are actually a number of spells and attributes that intentionally have a psionic ability. They've always been a part of D&D, without the need of having actually a separate sort of system.
Right. That's what I was thinking. The philosophy for UA has been to have a psionic version of class without building
Yeah, some editions of the game have gone that route. Psionics gets its full system. The issue with that is typically where that leads, even though it can often be a lot of fun, is most people then don't use it. And so there's always for us, we're always balancing, delivering the thing that many of us like and that we want, whether it's psionics or something else in D&D, and balancing that with, well, we want as many people to enjoy this and actually use it at their game tables as possible.
Right.
And really here, we're going back to the game's roots, which is you can have these abilities and they don't need a whole other rule book to explain their use. And also, they've already been that's why, in a way, we didn't blow a bugle before we started doing this recent UA with, like, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. We're doing, something different.
Yeah.
psionics are already in the core books. We have monsters in the monster manual
With
with psionic abilities actually called out in their stat blocks.
Yeah.
We have the great old one Warlock in the player's handbook who has psionic abilities.
Right.
We have spells that are psionically flavored. This has been intentional from the very beginning. And the Psychic Warrior...
To destroy 2 items.
Really, as a fighter, I would love to play.
If you ever get to play.
If I ever get to play, that's right. I am actually going to be playing D&D. I think on New Year's Day. We've just put it on the calendar, and I'm going to be playing a barbarian.
Well, you're always welcome to be a guest on my show.
Right.
If you want a completely insane 2 hours, you obviously get to play whatever you want. I'm sure you could design whatever you wanted. So.
Well, it's funny when I do play because I like. It's so rare that I do.
Yeah.
I will almost always just use what's in the player's handbook.
Yeah.
Because if I use something that like we're currently working on or that's Unearthed Arcana, my work brain is on.
Yeah.
Whereas to just
Yikes.
relax and play,
Right.
it's like I'll just stick with what's in the page.
Yeah.
But this Psychic Warrior, perfect if you want to play a fighter who is not only super strong or dexterous, but also has a mighty mind,
Yeah.
and is using that mind to
Dark
move things
Spore.
around.
This
and
won't be the
people
last.
around.
We may be too close to the
And
surface
so
for these
provide
countless
protection
deep roads.
for your,
But have I
for your
mentioned I
allies.
hate
Very
the
excited.
deep roads?
I'm excited for everything, but I'm very excited.
I'm excited about it.
I love Darth Vader. Every time I see Darth Vader, I keep going inside. My dad like orders me Darth Vader. Like, I love it. That's how it happens. Darth Vader. I just little Darth Vader.
I know. I feel that because when I was a kid, most of my friends, their favorite Star Wars characters were like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo. For me, I had 2 favorites. They were Princess Leia
Yeah.
and Darth Vader, which were essentially the 2 main characters who first appeared on screen.
Right, and it's also the strongest personalities. Like out of the gate, Leia is not messing around.
No, like I was always puzzled when people were like, oh, Luke is the leader or Han is the leader. I'm like, no, Leia was the boss. She was the one who gave them the prizes at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, Han Solo's great and everything, but that guy is the dude. Like, he's just that's for sure. No one can see that. And just like holy shit, and just watching looking at all of the
But you have all these people fighting him, but Bruce rides in, passes him to his face.
Yeah. Or like, yeah. You're like worried for her, and then you're like, how are you
Princess Leia was the queen of sad. Just saying. I love Princess Leia. If I had a patron saint that wasn't Felicia, it would be her.
Unearthed Arcana has a couple of new subclasses. One of them that is very interesting is something we've never seen before, the Barbarian has a wild soul. And tell me about how this
So
comes
that
out,
holds the dark spawn
and
back.
kind of the interesting design behind this, and how this helps the party. So the Path of the Wild Soul and the Way of the Astral Self, which is the new monk subclass that we released with the Barbarian subclass.
Ooh,
The thing the 2 of
side
them have in
pass.
common is they're both bonkers and they're both heavily magical. Right. And both of them were the brainchildren of the designer of our piece, Ben Tetrasor, who then worked with several of us to put these together. And we thought it would just be fun to release 2 subclasses together that are very high on psychedelia and really lean into how high magic can be in the D&D multiverse. Barbarians are traditionally not associated with spellcasting, but barbarians throughout the game's history have often been associated with different kinds of like primal power, primal magic. And so the idea with the Path of the Wild Soul is what happens to a barbarian absolutely saturated with magic, and that could be because they're from the Feywild or they have spent a great deal of time there. What would it be like for our class, it's essentially the Rage Machine, to have magic literally emanating from them? And so that is the path of the Wild Soul. It brings some of the unpredictability of the wild magic sorcerer to the barbarian. That unpredictability meant to fit to the barbarian, because again, it's a one often breaking things, filled with this primal rage, in a sense to explore.
Not divination magic?
Right. No, just explore again. Crazy magical things happening around this character. So I hope people are going to have fun with it.
Yeah,
Let
it
us know
terrifies
what they
me.
think.
Like any barbarian that can like hand a spell slot, or also you get to have that roll on the wild magic search table, and those are very interesting effects. But like, I love chaos, and so this is a barbarian that, if I am to play a barbarian, this is very much a barbarian I would be playing, right? Like, because I like not walking. That's for the same reason I like the wild magic sorcerer. You don't know what's going to happen when you walk into combat, and I think that's very interesting.
And that's exactly what we were doing. We're also, with both subclasses,
Some people make their living from valuables they find in the deep roads.
Strange.
Right.
We are now far enough in the edition that we have covered the classic archetype, right? They want to see, and as always, we're listening to what is featured. Maybe we can get even stranger. As we also explore similar practices, people will continue to see practicing from us.
I like the strange ones. I like the I mean, Vampire guys are flat out. But, I love these are two very but I think we very much get some feedback already that I feel overwhelming. Stuff that no one really that kind of brings us to, we have this wild magic sorcerer, barbarian, who's next to the Feywild, and maybe like a wild magic changed him forever, it's like radiating magic, with a thesis of radiation ball of rage. But now we have also a monk, a brand new monk who's very, tell me about this new monk.
So, Ben was inspired by a number of movies, Japanese animation. The influences come from a variety of things, and I just love how it came together. So, when he and the rest of the team brought it to me, I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's send it out into the world and see what people think. It's a chance for someone to play a monk who's still very much a monk, but who is literally wearing their kind of mystical nature on their sleeve. I mean, because they can clad themselves in this astral form, which at least I think visually is really spectacular. And I hope if people love it, then maybe someday we can put it in a book and actually have some awesome art with it. So I hope people love it.
Yeah, the art alone, because you have a visage that you can use to like frighten and do other things with. But then you can also have almost like magical armor when you're at a higher level.
It's like as you're leveling up, you're basically creating your astral outfit,
right?
And you become more and more powerful as you do.
And as described, it's kind of like your true form, your inner self, and I kind of like the language of that. That just because you look this way on the outside. You have your astral form is something very different.
Yeah.
The arms are very interesting.
And I mean that many-armed thing. I mean that you can see that in a lot of different stories.
Yeah, mythologies.
Mhm.
If you want to go to Doctor Strange,
Yeah.
you can take a look at that.
Well, and then it appears in Doctor Strange actually because of the influence of
Right, absolutely.
especially some Southeast Asian, and it was just something that we felt, oh, it's time for us to explore something like this in D&D. Because again, like with the monk, we've got the classic stuff covered.
Yeah.
Let's start going further afield to see what excites you.
Does this excite you? Does this like?
Oh, I love this stuff. Because I like things that not only have rich folkloric or mythological roots in our world, but also I love things that encourage the creation of spectacular characters in people's D&D games that cause people to sit up and take notice. You know, that you might have a person who's been playing D&D for years, but this character walks in and they're suddenly like, I've never seen a character like that.
Yeah.
I like for us to explore things that will cause even the jaded veteran to sit up and take notice and maybe have a sense of delight. That, you know, to always provide ways to re-spark people's bliss in this game, because you know D&D has so many ways for us to have fun. And even though some of us, myself included, I could actually play some of the vanilla character play classes in the Player's Handbook probably for decades to come and not get tired of them.
Right.
Still, some people want, I love those guys, but give me something new. And so
I might be that person. I have a little bit, after like 3 years, I think we've defined, I have a little subclass, you know, ADD.
Oh.
Like I have trouble focusing. I'm like, oh, that's the new shiny thing. I want that. That's so fun. Yeah, so seeing these wackier subclasses is fantastic. It always makes me imagine something.
Good.
And
And that's the goal.
And these are two subclasses in this Unearthed Arcana I don't think I would have ever thought of myself. And so I was immediately like, oh wow, like how would I involve this in my story? And then also, how does this influence my campaign as a DM? And that's the beauty of subclasses, I think, because not only can you think of like villains that maybe have these abilities, but then you can think of the why. Like, well, why does this barbarian exist? Why does this monk exist?
And I also hope that as you imagine that why, that it also maybe causes you to look at the base class in a new way. Right? Because one of the things we do when we explore new subclasses is actually causing people to have a new perspective on the class that subclass is in. Cause everyone to pause for a moment and go, oh, I didn't realize that the monk introspective, or the barbarian introspective, or any other class that we might be a subclass for, was capable of producing a subclass like this. And I think as soon as people see that, it can ignite a new appreciation for the possibilities that each of our character class has inside it.
Yeah, the existing mechanics for each of those classes is, they're still playing exploration.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been working on 5th edition for over 5 years now, and there's many subclasses, some of which have made it into print, and others, because of playtest feedback, have wandered into the sunset. But we still have not exhausted the possibilities. There are so many.